Do you own a Cricut machine and you'd like to work with rhinestones, but you just don't know where to start? Or maybe you purchased that first rhinestone template off of Etsy and you're stuck. If either of these situations are you, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Marilyn, and this video is going to be the first video of a 2-video series. Now, in this first video, I'm going to show you how I take a design from my computer, put it into Cricut Design Space, work with it within Cricut Design Space, and then cut it on my Cricut Maker. Now, you can cut rhinestone templates with other Cricuts. That's just what I use. You might have to play with the cut settings a little bit, but almost everything I talk about today is going to apply to you. Now, in the second video, I'm actually going to take the template that I show you in this video, fill it with rhinestones, transfer it onto a shirt, and we'll see that. Now, in that second video, I'll also talk a little bit more about rhinestones. So if you are interested in seeing either this video or that video, which I'm going to have linked in the video description below this one, then stay here and let's just jump into it. Now, I've opened Cricut Design Space, and so the first thing that I want to do is I want to say New Project. So I'll click right there, and then I'll click on Upload, and then Upload Image. Now I have a couple of options. I can either click Browse and I can go look through files, or I could just go over here and drag it over. Today I'm going to go ahead and click Browse. And the file's right here. Now notice in this file, this is for an SS10 size of rhinestone. If you tried to use SS6s in this, the holes would be way too large. And then also, I have the dimensions of the file. So when this comes in, it should be 10.801 inches wide by 10.795 inches tall. Now I'll tell you, when I bring in rhinestone templates, sometimes they come in crazy small, sometimes crazy large, and sometimes close to the right size. This one did come in very, very close to the right size. But the first thing that I will do after it uploads to the canvas is I'm going to check the measurements. So I'll go ahead and say Open, and then Upload. So you click right on it, and then say Add to Canvas. All right, let's make this smaller so we can see the whole thing. And if you see the size right here, this is just a rounded up or a rounded down version. You want to get the actual size. Now, for some reason, I'm no longer getting my sizes up here. I'm on a different computer, and so for me to see the size, I have to click More, and then there it is. So remember, it needs to be 10.801 by 10.795. So this half is right. This one is off by 0.001. Now, on a template this large, this third digit is really not going to make a big difference. But let me show you. This is the first time I've had this happen. When I corrected it, and I have the proportions locked and I hit Enter, now all of a sudden this one is just barely too big by 0.001. I'm okay with that. Now, when I designed this, I designed it in Silhouette Business Edition. So you might wonder, why don't you just cut with a silhouette? Well, I don't actually own a silhouette, and so I designed them in Silhouette Business Edition, save them, and then cut them on my Cricut Maker. Now, all files are different, and people design them differently, but for this file, I have it in 2 layers, or 2 groupings. And so with the whole thing selected, and the first thing was get it to the right size, so the holes are the right size, I'm going to say Ungroup. So I click right here, hit Ungroup. One group, as you can see here, is the case and the word Unstoppable. And the second group are the 3 lights. And there's actually 3 groupings in it too. I'll show you that here in just a minute. Now, you would not want to cut your template like this because it would be very difficult to get the right colors of stones in the right place. So with this selected, I'm just going to drag it off. Now my flock is 12 inches wide. I can cut up to about 11.5. So let's see how wide this is right now. It's 10.939, so that is perfectly fine. Let's get those lights. I could actually move those over a little bit more to the right and still be fine. That gives me a little more space between the circles and the casing so that you don't have these stones falling into those holes and vice versa. Okay, so let's say that this came in more than 11.5 inches wide, which it didn't. In that case, you might take part of your design and move it down below, and then you could rotate it, but we don't have to do that. One other thing that you could do is you could click. It does not want me clicking on those circles. So I'll click over here. You could click on the circles and then you could say ungroup. And then if you wanted to, you could go ahead and delete 2 of those. Now what that's going to do is basically save you the time of cutting this circle and this circle. But I want to go ahead and fill those all at once and transfer them at once. You wouldn't have to because they're all the exact same size. That's just how I want to do it. So I'm going to go back so that I have all 3. Right now they're not grouped, so I'm going to click over here, hold the command down, add the others to it, and I'll go down here to combine. I'll just unite them for now. Now there's another option of something you can do, but let me show you what you would do first. So if I'm all done with this, I would click on everything and then I would go ahead and I would attach it so that it cuts exactly the way you see it. But I want to do one other thing. This is something I've started doing recently that's just been helpful. I put a bounding box or a weeding box around it. So I'm going to go to shapes and then I'm going to click on the square. Now I already know I want this square to be about 11.5 by 11.5. But if you don't know, or let's say the design isn't really to where you need it the same dimensions, you can just make it larger, drag it to the bottom so you can see everything. And then in my case, it doesn't matter, but I would unlock that. And then I would just drag these corners and move them to where I want them. Again, in my case, I want it to be 11.5 by 11.5. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and move it just a little bit because you can see it's too close to those circles. So you can either grab it with your cursor and do it, or I'm just hitting the right arrow. All right, just like before, when I add this, I still select everything and I say attach. Now there's one thing I didn't like. I want those to move to the left just a little bit. All right, so I'll go back, select everything again and say attach. So at this time, I'm ready to go ahead and cut this. So I'm going to say make it. And then I'll say continue. And now I have a setting that I put in here for rhinestone flock. What works for me is 340 pressure single cut. Now every machine's going to vary, the blades are going to vary, so please do a small circle, the size of your rhinestone circles. Please do a test cut with that before you put an entire piece of flock in there. I'm pretty good on my settings, so I'll say browse all materials. And then for me, I just type the word rhinestone here, and there it is. Now let's say you've come up with the perfect settings, and you want to add those in as a custom setting. You're going to go to Material Settings, and then you're going to go to the very bottom, and you'll say Add New Material. So I'm going to name mine Rhinestone Flock, and I'll say Save, and then it's going to have me adjust the pressure. So I want 340. All right, let's see, where is it? Okay, so I'm a little bit low, so I'm going to use this plus and click it 2 times to get to 340. Now this is where you can add multiple cuts. On rhinestone flock, I don't do multiple cuts. And then on this, you can change the blade. Now I am very curious to see how well the deep point blade would work, so I'll try that a different time. Fine point blade works really well for me. Now I'm going to say save, and then I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and I'll say done. So now once again, if I say browse all materials, there's my new setting. So I'll click on it and I'll say done. So at this point, my Cricut is flashing. It's ready for me to load the flock. So let's move over to the table. I want to show you how I add it to my mat. I have a roll of flock. I have a Cricut mat. It is not super sticky, but since I take the white backing off and the flock sticky, it's plenty sticky. I'll use a rotary blade, and then I have some parchment paper, and I'll show you what I do with that in just a minute. And then lastly, I have a ruler, and it has the cork on the back. Now you do whatever works for you. I'm just showing you my process. Now remember, I'm cutting my template with that 11.5-inch square around it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my flock at 12 by 12. So I line it up over here on the left side. And I guess I should have mentioned I use a cutting mat, but I line it on the left side. And then I have my 12-inch mark here and here. So then I take my straight edge. And because I'm using that weeding box or bounding box, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I like it to be nice and straight so that next time I'm cutting a template, I don't have a real slanted piece. Okay, so pull on this. It's not quite all the way through. Hopefully one more time will do the trick, and it did. All right, so here's my Cricut mat. The top is here, so I'm going to turn it this way. That's just easy for me. And then I'm going to put this parchment paper here. What I have found is when your flock is smooth on your mat, you get a better cut. If you have those air pockets or things like that, you just don't get as nice a cut. Now again, I cut with this backing off. I would love to find settings and mats and everything that makes it where I could just leave this on and then I don't have to clean the flock dots off my mat. But I've tried so many times and I just have not found settings yet that work great for me. Okay, so I'm going to put this on top of my parchment paper and make sure it's pretty smooth. Now with about an inch or so exposed, I'm going to make sure it's really straight up at the top. And then I'm going to go ahead and smooth that out. And some people do this with vinyl. So it's that same concept. So now I can peel this out. And then I can just roll this down a little bit at a time and make sure it's smooth. Now typically I use this little brayer tool. One more thing I forgot to mention. And then I just like to run my hand over it to make sure there's no big air pockets in it. And then this has a little bit of some type of excess fiber on it, so I'll take that off. All right, so I am ready to go ahead and put this in the maker. All right, so let's see how this turned out. Now, when you take this flock off, you want to be really, really careful that you don't stretch it too much. And so what I like to do is pull it part of the way off and then reach my hand up, grab more, and then start pulling. I can see some of these holes are staying in, but that's okay. We can get those out. Most of them are coming out. It may be time for a new blade for me. So I'm just going to work my way all the way around this. Doing a little bit at a time, and definitely, like I said, not pulling unless I have a really good grip near the holes. So what I mean is I'm not going to take this corner and just stretch and pull. That's the way I used to do it. But I learned the hard way that these holes stretch really easily. They can also bust through. So if you have it break or bust through, most of the time when you put it back down on your chopping mat or whatever you're storing them on, they usually work out just fine. Now I'm going to lay this back down on the piece of paper it was on. So there's a slippery side, and then the backing is not slippery. So to do this, I'm putting on the not slippery side. And I'm just going to use my brayer and push this down. Now, a lot of the times you can get more to come off this way. Okay, so I got probably most of them off. Then beyond that, I'll just pull them out with my fingers. Then I like to put my templates on a flexible chopping mat. These are very similar to the ones that you can get at the Dollar Tree, but these are larger. And I did have several designs that I couldn't fit on the Dollar Tree ones, so I like to order these off of Amazon and use them. If you're interested, I will put a link to these in the video description. Okay, so I have it started nicely down here, so I'm just going to push my hand up and try to get it smoothed out. It is ready to fill and put on a shirt or a tote bag. Whoops, I see one more. So this is like a pin, but it's not a pin brand. You can just jab in the middle of that and pull up, and then it'll come out. Now, if you want to see how I fill this with rhinestones and then put it on a shirt, check out the second video in my two-part series. I have a link to it in the video description below. Then also in that second video, I'm going to talk a lot more about the flock, the transfer mask, the tools that you use, and the rhinestones. So I hope to see you there, and until next time, bye-bye.